Portland, Oregon. It's time for A Different View, with women's perspectives on the fight to end prohibition, with Portland Dispensaries examiner and mother of four, Jennifer Alexander, and professional healthcare provider, Iva Cunningham from Alternative Medical Choices, Inc. Now, here's A Different View.
Hello and welcome back. It's September 18th, and it's been a few weeks since we've had a show.
Definitely.
We've tried to have a show. Last week.
You went to Florida and everything fell apart.
It's been an interesting summer, and we'll recap here in a little bit. But they're listening to A Different View. I'm with Jennifer Alexander, and I'm Iva Cunningham. And you're listening to a show about women's perspective on prohibition, on cannabis reform, and relegalization. Gosh, Jennifer, what a long summer. And it's not over yet.
You know, things keep going faster and faster and faster.
It's
the election is no. It's the election. It's the political season is what I was going to say.
This is for
there
sure.
There is so much stuff going on, and you can see all these pieces falling into place and different strategies coming out. And
oh yeah,
it's been very interesting and tiring these last few weeks. And we have 49 days until the election.
49. God.
I'm doing a countdown, so
it's going very fast. That's right. You're doing an article series or a series of articles on the countdown to the election. Correct?
Yeah. I'm going to talk about all the different reasons why we need to pass legalization, not just the ACTA here in Oregon, but in general. But I'm very much focusing on Oregon because we've got the hemp components of our bill. There's all these raids going on with medical marijuana that show that it's not enough. You know, there's just too many things that we need to know about. I did an article today about how felons in Oregon can vote. One of my big things for people to know.
Because people don't know that. People who have a felony conviction do not know that. A lot of them don't.
Yeah.
And they just they give up and drop out of the process. And I think, part of the process does, take that inspiration to vote or to get involved out of people. Mm-hmm. Sometimes it has opposite effect, and thank God for that, because we wouldn't have some great activists if we didn't. But yeah, what a long summer. I was in Florida for 6 weeks, came back, some new changes there, and then Russ has decided to take the show independently. So producing our show, thank goodness. But anyway, lots more to talk about when we get back from our break.
We should probably say right now that, as our listeners will know from the fact that it's Tuesday night, we are now going to be on Tuesdays instead of Mondays. So that's another change.
Mondays were killing me. Okay?
Yeah, but
Mondays
Tuesdays will work. We'll do Tuesday nights at 8 p.m. Pacific.
That's much better for me.
Yeah.
All right, we'll be right back. You're listening to A Different View.
Take marijuana off of the streets, put it in a store. We can make it harder for the teens to buy. Sell it like a bottle of wine. Jobs for our people, money for schools. Who could ask for more? Strict regulation, fund education. Yes, on 64.
I'm growing marijuana in my yard. Growing marijuana in my yard. I got little pots of pot spread out all over the lot, 'cause I'm growing marijuana in my yard. Well, I got the seed from Mexico, stuck it in some dirt and let it grow. Put it in my garden with my peppers and my peas, and I get all the smoke I need for free.
That's music from Ben Scales. And now, back to A Different View.
Hey, welcome back. I'm with Jennifer Alexander, and I'm Iva Cunningham. Can you hear us? Just
Yes,
fine?
yes.
Oh, okay. Jennifer, what was that?
Oh, I think I'm having the same problem as you are.
Oh, no, I can hear everything just fine now. I'm good. So this last weekend, there's been a lot of political, stuff going on in this community. There's been, oh my gosh, a couple of raids that have happened today. One in Eastern Oregon. What are you looking for?
The headset. Sorry.
We're going to change headphones for Jennifer.
Just
over
unplug
here.
yours.
Unplug this one?
Yes, thank you. Sorry.
Sorry, technical difficulties. Sometimes this is what happens
one's a little
on live
short.
shows.
Sorry.
Live shows with volunteers.
Already got one there.
There you go.
There we go. That's what I was looking for. Oh, now I've got sound.
But this past weekend, I was in. Have we got it already?
Yes, I'm good. Go ahead. Sorry.
Russ and I went to the Seattle High Times Medical Cannabis Award. Medical Cannabis Cup. And it's always like those are like a reunion. You know, Russ and I, Russ is more on the national level, so, you know, we travel a bit within the community at large, and it's these events are always really interesting. I always tell people, young entrepreneurs in the cannabis community, to go to these events because it's a great networking opportunity for them. It's a way to meet new people. It's a way to support your community, your industry, and to get involved. It always is, because people walk away going, wow, that was, you know, such a great experience. But this weekend we got to see Danny Danko, and one of our local friends, Ganja John, won first place in concentrates.
Wow, good job, John.
Yeah, and that's, what was it, Cascadia Concentrates?
Cascadia Concentrates and Healing Space Gardens.
That's right, yeah. So I believe Healing Space Gardens produced the plant.
And it was a subcool genetic, too.
Oh, was it?
Yeah.
Oh, okay, very good. So there you go. I mean, first place in the High Times Medical Cannabis Cup. Really, that's a good on John for that. Anyway, but it was very interesting. A lot of old faces, some new faces, some new products, which is always very cool when you see people coming up. And it never ceases to amaze me just how creative this community can be. Mm-hmm. But it was interesting because talking to people who aren't local here, coming to the state, and they see this, you know, people that we talk to all the time, you know, Sharon from Georgia, or Timmy from Georgia, and Garrett Overstreet in Oklahoma, and, you know, even down in Florida. You know, every day, I mean, I encounter people who do not have even the rights that we have. You know, they're fighting for the basic rights that we have, and they look at us as, we have it so good. This is the land of Goshen. You know, and it's infuriating, and that was the one thing that kept coming up over and over again, is that people were so disgusted with, like, how can there be dissension in your community? Come to my state, where I can go to jail for the smell. Come to my state. It's 19 years. Come to my state. It's a lifetime sentence. You know, and the perspective, and that's why I like to go to those events sometimes, is because
it puts your perspective back into place.
It sure does. And you know, for them, this is like a vacation. Mm-hmm. And, you know, but this is their backyard, and this is, you know, they hopefully get this to catch on in other states. You know, that's the goal for all of us. But it is, you know, it is interesting to talk to people who hold a different perspective. Like, please cry me a river. You don't get all you want. Right. Oh gosh, I would just like to not go to jail.
I think that's. All right, so as an individual, I believe I should stand up and defend what I personally want. You know what I mean? As an individual, I should be willing to say, this is what I'm after. This is my ultimate goal.
That's why we have the voting. That's why we have a vote.
But we're in politics. When you're in politics, there's this whole negotiation process.
Mm-hmm. Nothing happens in a vacuum.
And you're not going to get everything you want. Mm-hmm. Ever, 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 ever. Nope. You're just
You
not.
didn't when you were 2, and you won't now.
And I think it's kind of telling of our society that some people think that they should get everything that they want. No, I will agree that there are some things that I don't think that you should compromise on. I think that you should stand up and defend, if you believe strongly enough, you know. And I think that that's what's going on with some of these people. But I think we should all be spending more time discussing the goal and asking, is this meeting that goal? You know,
I think what we need to spend more time on is really clarifying our message and getting it out to the demographics that we are weak on. And you know, we'll talk about that in probably our next segment or two, is about poll numbers and where our local measures are standing. Like there's a legalization ballot in Washington, Colorado. We talk about that a lot, and there's one here in Oregon. You know, fortunately, there's just a little river between here and Vancouver.
Yeah.
So it won't be that dramatic when I move. But anyway, that's probably the only negative thing I'll say. Maybe.
Well, I think that poll numbers are like a thermometer. I think they tell you where you're at.
Right.
I don't think that poll numbers are the end all be all. I think they tell you what you need to do now.
We have 49 days to keep pushing the numbers. Mm-hmm. We have, you know, but when we will break down the numbers in the next segment. We'll break down the numbers and we'll discuss, you know, what demographics those are, who are the people in those demographics, and what message we need to be sending to them.
Yeah.
I think if we're going to be talking about, you know, the disparities in different, demographics, we should also talk about how people can go out and talk to their neighbors.
I think we should save that for the third segment, because
think
I think
so?
we should talk about what's happening right now that influences those decisions,
yes.
and then go into because I think ultimately the one thing that I hear the most is medical marijuana is good, but I don't support legalization. I hear that all the time.
Mm-hmm.
But what that's actually saying is I don't understand that medical marijuana is not like getting it at the pharmacy. There
Right.
isn't this well-defined, regulated industry. It's
Well,
a mess.
there's always an opportunity. I mean, every time somebody gives you an opposition, there's always an opportunity to open the door for discussion. Mm-hmm. And and I always like to ask the question, why? Why? You support medical, but you don't support legalization. Why?
Well, and to me, it doesn't matter, though, because
Well, no,
what they
it
need to
certainly
understand.
does matter, because
no,
that's
it
how you
doesn't,
frame your
because,
argument.
No, listen, this is what I'm saying, why it doesn't matter. If you believe that there are people that are sick enough that need medical marijuana, why are you rating them? That's the question. Why are
Well,
you taking away their sources?
Right,
Why are
but
you
Jennifer,
making
I'm just
it
talking.
harder?
That's right. That's the people that are a lot more involved on our opponent's side. What I'm talking about is the person who doesn't know, who is spouting off a 6-second soundbite that they themselves haven't thought through. And this happens. It doesn't matter
Yeah.
what the debate is. I mean, I had this conversation with my cousin when we were talking about gay rights in Oregon, and she's in a mixed marriage, and she's like, "Well, I just don't know how I feel about gay marriage." And I was like, I couldn't even respond to that, because I was like, do you realize that you were just granted the same rights, not that long ago?
Yeah.
Your marriage would not even exist on paper not that long ago. And she never even thought about it like that. And that's what I'm saying.
Right.
When those opportunities present themselves, we should take the opportunity to educate them and ask why. Because I think one thing that we do in this community is we're not listening to our opponents very well. What is their opposition? And you and I have brought up several different, things throughout, throughout our time in the air about different, messages that they're coming back at us
Right.
with. And I think, as they have a lot more resources, their message can roar. And we need to keep having that conversation too, but we need to understand what it is that they're opposing. And that's the only way we can find that out, is ask why.
Right. Speaking of, and that's just a great segue to this little thing that I wanted to talk about, and I didn't want to get too deep into it, so I'll talk about it real quick right now. The Oregon Secretary of State posts online the opposition statements and the support statements for any measure that's going to be on our ballot. I think other states do this too, but I can't say for sure. I know ours does. And they've recently posted the information for Measure 80, and I went and looked, and it's interesting to me that the only people that come out formally and ever oppose this, first off, are Shirley Morgan, who runs an organization called Oregonians Against the Legalization of Marijuana. That is her organization. She's been very much a DARE supporter since day one, works with, different governments to promote those programs, particularly law enforcement. And then
Some
it's the
people
chief
drink
of
the Kool-Aid.
police, their association, the sheriff's association, and the district attorney's association. Nobody else at all, anywhere, ever.
The only people that matter.
They're the ones that oppose this all the time, every step of the way, no matter what we propose. And why they oppose it is the funny things.
Where can you find the information for that, Jennifer?
It is at the Secretary of State's page. If you just go OregonVotes.org, it takes you to their main
OregonVotes.org,
page.
Secretary of State.
And there's a
Okay.
couple of links there. And it's the second one down. It's when it says the Military Overseas Voters Guide is what it is.
Okay.
And until they post the full voters guide, which will be out later, it'll be this exact same text. It's just a different book.
Okay.
They post this so that we can view it. And the sort of things that they talk about, like one of them points out that there'll be fields of marijuana next to your home, and in the same point says growing endangers others because of toxic materials, overloads of electricity, and fires. Not if it's grown in
outside.
fields.
I know, you let us grow outside.
And this just shows how, you know what I'm saying? I mean, that's just the first point. This whole thing.
That is such a stoner mistake.
That was Shirley Morgan. But it goes on and on
somebody
through
please,
here.
if you're listening to the show, somebody please point that out to her.
No, I plan on tearing apart these points in the next couple of days. I just found this late last night, and I have not had a chance. But it's funny. funny.
You
I
go get 'em, girl.
want the voters to think about what they're saying.
Oh, absolutely. That's from, we need
Here's
to
another
understand
one
what
for
this-
you. And you're kind of a statistics guy, Russ, so you tell me what this means to you. But what it says is that this is from the Sheriff's Association of Oregon, says that 70% of those entering the jail system tested positive for marijuana and report participating unsuccessfully in treatment programs. And in the very next section, it says over half of those arrested for violent crimes in Oregon test positive for marijuana at the time of arrest. So you're telling me that there are 20% less people in the violent criminal population that use marijuana than in the general prison population. That's saying something. I mean, these are the points. And they're telling us. And I'm saying, yes, let's listen to this. Let's see what they're really saying.
I agree, and I think that's great. But here's why.
It really is. And it's the whole thing is like this. It's great. I read through it, and it shows that they don't
enjoy it when you two get together and start breaking down these messages. It cracks me up.
Well, it's because people don't think about what they're saying, like you were just saying.
Right.
But it's true. And if they actually took everything that they said, I don't even have to give them my arguments. No. I just need to ask them, well, wait, you're saying this and this. Doesn't that mean this? It's either yes or no.
It's like the argument when they say, well, if we legalized marijuana, and it's probably in one of their lists there, but if we legalized, the price would plummet, and more people might use it, and that would be bad somehow. Okay, okay.
Are you there, Toby?
They're I think it's the District Attorneys Association comes right out and says that that it's very easy to grow, so of course we're not going to make millions of dollars in taxes. And they focus on all of these tax revenues as though that's the only reason why we care to grow or legalize,
Well, for taxes.
so that we'll make a whole bunch of money for our state. But it's saving money. That's part of that. That's the biggest thing.
It's saving, and
But ironically, the money that we're saving is all of the people that are opposing it right here. Are they afraid of losing their jobs? Are they afraid of doing more serious work?
I've said that for a long time. The DEA has to have a job. I mean, they fight so hard because this is their job. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we see this in our community. We draw a lot of people out on it. We call a lot of people, it happens all the time. Oh, you don't want legalization because you're,
right.
Fill in the blank. There's, and this is the same thing. When you make big bucks like these guys do,
you have a stake in it.
You have skin in the game.
Well, we need to cut to a break, so you're listening to A Different View. We'll be right back in just a moment.
And as we go to break, big thanks to Big Daddy Fink, Timmy Harris, who solidified our ASCAP, BMI, and CSAC licensing, which means you ladies get to go to break with a little JT and Love Stone.
She's freaky, she knows it. She's freaky, but I like it. Yeah. She shuts the room down. The way she walks and causes a fuss. The baddest in town.
The law offices of Omar Figueroa would like to remind you to stand up for your rights. Please do not give up your precious liberties. There's nothing wrong with standing up for our constitutional rights, and in fact, it's the only way to honor the Constitution that recognizes our natural rights. Treat law enforcement with respect and respect the Constitution by standing up for your rights. If you are detained or arrested, stand up for your rights by repeating, I respectfully invoke all my legal and constitutional rights. I do not consent to any search and seizure. I want to remain silent, and I want to speak to my attorney, Omar Figueroa. Omar Figueroa has more than a decade of experience in federal and California courts and graduated from Yale University, Stanford Law School, and Trial Lawyers College. Please contact the law offices of Omar Figueroa at 415-489-0420 or 707-829-0215 or on the web at www.omarfigueroa.com.
We're gonna do a song that was written. I don't know if it was actually written by Muddy Waters, but I first heard it done by Muddy Waters, and it's called Champagne and Reefer. And Buddy Guy is gonna help us out. me champagne when I'm thirsty. Bring me a reefer when I wanna get high. Give me champagne when I'm thirsty.
Now we're back with a different view, and as we get back going, I was trying to give you that other silly argument when something happened with Liebermater, and it totally took me off track. But the stupid argument I was trying to point out is the one where they say we've got to, marijuana needs to be illegal because otherwise it would be priced so low. Well, basically what you're arguing for then is a price support for Mexican terrorists.
Right, right, exactly. Well, and actually that argument leads right into this segment yet again.
How did I do that?
So in this segment, I want to talk a little bit about what's going on here in Oregon, and it's happening in other states.
Oh, yeah.
I'm just not as familiar with the particular entities involved and what's happened. I'm very familiar with what's going on here in Oregon. But understand that we're not the only ones facing this.
No.
It's happening everywhere, especially anywhere that's looking at legalization or even medical marijuana.
Well, even California's had a few of these too. So
Right. And it's flat out, admittedly, intended to sway public opinion. The
Sure
DEA
it is.
letter that came out just a couple weeks ago, it was all of the former DEA heads, Drug Enforcement Administration heads, came out and said that Eric Holder needed to openly oppose all of the legalization efforts, because if he didn't, then people would think they can do this, that they can vote on this, which for one is just, oh my God, how arrogant. What do you mean we can't vote on it? Even if you can override it, we have a right to vote on it.
Yeah.
So that kind of
you can
offended
take
me.
away a lot of things.
But the fact that they said that they were doing it with the intent to sway the public debate, to alter the public debate.
Sure.
Their sole goal is to use their positions of authority to affect what we choose voluntarily and freely to do with our vote. And that made me even more mad.
Well, they're all political positions, though, Jennifer. I mean, that's their job.
But so then what we see happening is, I mean, we already know they're going to use their positions of authority to sway the public vote. Sure. And we see in the last 3 weeks, as we're leading into the election and also leading into the harvest season when people are actually bringing in their medicine, particularly outdoor crops, we've had 2 dispensaries and 1 farm raided over the last 3 weeks.
So high hopes.
Well, let me go from the Cannabosum was raided on August 30th. That's a Eugene dispensary.
Okay,
they arrested the owner and his son while they were driving down the highway, detained them while they issued search warrants at all of their locations, including Cannabosum and like 5 other residences, and then released them with no charges after they had seized everything. And then a week later, give or take a couple of days, they raided the 45th Parallel, which is a very outspoken dispensary. I call them all dispensaries because to me, you dispense medicine. That has nothing to do with money. That's not illegal. But out by the Idaho border, the 45th Parallel is the only location for hours in any direction for those residents. And they commonly serve the Idaho patients who are lawful Oregon card holders. Now, there's an underscore that, some of them are taking it home across the border where it's no longer legal. How dare they use their medicine at home? That's the message there.
Right. Drive to Ontario every day.
Yeah, but if they just hang out in Oregon, they're allowed to use their medicine and be legal. And some of them actually do
and a lot
that.
Of those, to be fair, a lot of those patients that were coming over to Ontario were also getting busted on their way back. And
that's where I was going to go in a minute, because that's a
harassment.
formal strategy that's been happening.
Sure.
Oregon police have actually staked out the 45th Parallel, monitored cars with Idaho plates in particular, and called ahead to Idaho police to catch them as soon as they cross the border, knowing that it's easier for them to prosecute for something that's blatantly illegal than it is for them to prosecute
Jennifer,
here.
I have to say this because this is one thing that does kind of bother me. Well, I don't like to see anybody get busted. I don't want anybody to get busted, Luther. I don't want to see anybody suffer for something like this. I mean, it seems so silly.
Right.
However, it seems to me that the owner lived in Idaho, serving patients in Idaho. That perception of people driving across the border from one legal state to a semi-legal state to another illegal state, and the owner has his residence in Oregon and
In Idaho, you mean?
Idaho, yes. That perception, well, I don't personally think that it should matter. I mean, when I go into Idaho, I still use cannabis for my aches and pains and to sleep at night and to deal with my family.
I get where you're going with all of this.
But that perception, and so what
But here's the problem. That perception has been around for the last, 2, almost 3 years, that he's been openly operating boldly and loudly, making no secret about what he's doing. And they wait until just before the election for legalization to come out and raid him.
Why I'm saying that, though, Jennifer, is that he's low-hanging fruit. And there are people in this community, while I don't disagree with what you're saying, I'm saying that there's low-hanging fruit, and the reason why they do that, like they harass the one in Astoria, the one in Rainier, and this one, and what you've noticed is that they've kind of become a little quieter, a little hushed.
See, I don't think so.
Some of them, hear me out, though. And so what I think is that it was easier to build a case against him, and this is the right time to do that. Why do it when there's nothing on the ballot? Why do it when
You're presuming that there will be a case against him, though, but frankly, they either
No,
don't press charges or they blackmail them into
This
fleeing.
is what I'm referring to, is whether they try him in court is irrelevant. The point is that they're trying him in the media. This creates bad press for us.
Which was my point. They're using their positions of authority to alter the public debate.
Right.
Are we okay with that? Regardless of whether or not we're okay with medical
marijuana. We're using public resources, taxes that you and I paid for them to go after patients and business owners with not a lot of good cause, although they can certainly
There's a bunch of arguments, but let me put it to you this way. Are we suggesting that there is no marijuana growing in the public forest right now? Are we suggesting that there's no criminal gangs, trafficking in methamphetamine, cocaine, guns, anything else? They're really going to spend our limited resources while we're cutting budgets across the board to make patients fuel that black market, to send patients to those drug cartels, to put the money into their pockets, because how dare a sick patient make a living off of it? And that's the problem right there.
Right.
Today, this morning at 9 o'clock, the DEA, these first 2 raids were state officials as far as I understand. The DEA, the federal government, came in and raided High Hopes Farm in Southern Oregon today. James Bowman, who runs the farm, has been in the media spotlight a lot the last year, I think more so than previously. Maybe 2 years. Yeah, he's been promoting a legislative change to try to alter the way we look at our growers, basically, under our medical marijuana law. And he's had legislatures come and tour his farm last summer, and they were actually really impressed.
He's been very public about that. He's been very public about that. And again, that's what I'm saying.
But one of the people that was really, really impressed by his farm, to my shock, was Representative Sal Esquivel, who's the same guy who was posting to the media and to the legislature that we should allow police to just randomly come into patients' homes to check on their gardens. This is this guy, but he basically said, this looks good to me. This is well established, regulated. He was pretty impressed with what he saw. Of course, he feels there's still changes needed to the program, but not DEA raids. And this is the kind of issue that we need to be honing in on, because what we're seeing is as we're leading up to the election, they're abusing their authority to force people to make a decision that they wouldn't otherwise make by attacking patients. Well, hold on. At this point right now, they're saying, you can have your medical, but we're not going to let you smoke for fun, while they're attacking the very patients that just want it for medical. It's not like they're even leaving them alone.
I can see that as a motive to inspire activists. I can see that. However, I don't think it's a good idea to continue to draw attention to some of the things they're doing, because they're already trying to play it out in the media. So
I absolutely think we should.
Right, but our counterattack shouldn't be look at this big farmer, focusing on that. Our counter should be, and if we had regulated supply systems, the patients would still be able to, or if we had regulated supply system, there wouldn't be a criminal element. If we had a regulated supply system, it's going back to reestablish our message and to reiterate our message, instead of saying, it's bad and these patients and they suffer, because people are sick of it.
I think what we're actually seeing right now is that our opposition thinks it's still like the 80s. That it's still the just say no strategy.
I remember the 80s.
What they're not taking into account when they're doing all of these raids is that something like 70 to 80% of all Americans support medical marijuana.
Right.
And they're attacking it.
Right.
That's a huge majority that they're coming out openly against. We want that in the media right now. We want to point out what they're doing.
But you have to understand that the general public does not see High Hopes Farm
because we're not showing it
as
to
compassionate, and I don't.
Can I drop just something in there from the previous reporting in the Oregonian that that summer story on the High Hopes Farm, where he points out that he pays his laborers in medicine and has two prices, $40 or $150 per ounce, and how those are on their face, they're prima facie, violations of the Medical Marijuana Act, and how that plays into prosecutors' decisions.
But if that was the case, then this is where I say, okay, so on the one hand, you're telling me that either A, this is illegal activity that's in blatant violation of the law, so we're just going to let him continue to do this for a year or better before we arrest him, because it's really not that big of a deal that we don't need to do it now, or because that's not evidence that there was anything wrong. I mean, it's either
saying not
well, hold
talk
on.
about it, but I am saying that
if they didn't do anything a year ago, clearly there wasn't a problem with it, because they know he harvested.
That's not true. It takes a while to build evidence.
No. Right after the legislatures toured it, 4 of them openly with the media took pictures, film, and got him on tape saying all of these things. He then proceeded to harvest it and pass it along to his patients. There could have been a full case, open, shut, closed right then. We wasted a year, if they were investigating this whole year, of our law enforcement resources to take him off the streets because he might have been twisting the law a little bit when real crimes are going on and not getting dressed.
I don't disagree with you. But I would say that we probably don't know everything, and we probably will never know everything, because generally what happens...
we don't need to.
Right. But
it's
generally what happens...
until proven guilty.
Well, I know, but I got that. But I think what we need to understand is that we don't know all the details, and most of the time what happens, Jennifer, people cop a plea. If they are persecuted, if they are prosecuted, they were persecuted then too. If they are prosecuted, they're going to cop a plea. And so we won't know all the facts or of the details. But I go back to perception. Oh, wrap it up.
I was going to say we're going to go to break, and we're going to be talking about the messaging right when we come back.
Yeah,
so this is probably a good spot to stop, and then we'll come back on the break and talk a little bit more about the messaging elements. Here, or not. Or not.
You say you got a feeling to change up the system. We can light the scene, justice on the peace, creating a scene, yeah. Crowds are rapping out 10 times the power. That's some gunshots, leaving some dead. Listen up,
how should I say this? You know how you enjoy a drink after work? Well, in many ways, I'm just like you. I have a good job, I work hard, but when I get home, I prefer to relax with marijuana instead of alcohol. They're a little similar, but marijuana is actually less damaging to my health. And frankly, I don't feel like crap the next day. I hope this makes sense. But if not, let's talk.
Let's focus our discussion first on marijuana, okay? Marijuana has a very distinct smell, okay? I'm going to pass around just a little tiny bit, and I want you all to take a smell so you know when someone is smoking marijuana near you.
From Revolution.
All right.
Mystic Roots. And we're back with a different view.
Thank you. I love that music. Thank you, Timmy. Anyway, we were talking a lot about, the political climate. And we also want to talk a little bit about poll numbers and different demographics. And
messaging.
And messaging, thank you. Which is really what we're trying to do. And you were saying something before we went to the break. You were telling me to just chill out until we came back. So I chilled out. And if you would like to pick up the rest of that conversation.
Well, no, I'm just saying that I think that the key thing of what's going on right now that they're not banking on, they being the opposition, particularly law enforcement and those with that mindset, is that they're attacking medical marijuana. It doesn't even matter if these people aren't doing it right. Provide a better framework. Provide more oversight.
Right. That I agree with.
That's what we're missing. Not more SWAT raids, not more wasted tax dollars, not more lives
destroyed. But that burden falls upon us.
No, it doesn't. That's what I'm trying to say. They're presenting the argument for us that medical marijuana is not sufficient to meet the needs of those who need it. It doesn't matter if you are that dying cancer patient or if you are the 20-year-old kid that's smoking for fun because you got a backache and you
No, but we have to form our rebuttal. Let's put it that way.
Right.
That's what I'm talking about. I think our forming our rebuttal or our argument, Jennifer. I think that we haven't done a really good job, reaching those areas, different demographics, those age groups that absolutely have nothing to do with cannabis anymore. They may have done it in high school, might know a couple people who do it on a party, maybe they even do it in a party occasionally, but it's not part of their lifestyle, or they don't do it at all. They're not familiar. And, this is a demographic that a lot of people are afraid of.
Well, actually, there's an interesting thing regarding these poll numbers and just some conversations that I've personally had. Washington's I-502 is polling at 57%, and Oregon's, your article has the wrong measure number, it threw me for a minute, is at 37%. It's measure 80, it says 64. But anyway, so I had to do a double take. But anyway, that's a 20% difference between Washington and Oregon.
And now
most Washington patients feel like Oregon's got it made. You guys have the right measure. You guys can grow your own. You guys don't have this 5 nanogram per milliliter measurement, blah, blah, blah. Yet they're polling 20% higher. Now, I think there's 2 factors for that. One, money. Duh. That's just a given. We need more money here in Oregon to get our message out there so people know what we are talking about.
Right.
But number 2 is that most of our community is used to arguing with themselves. They don't know how to talk to the people on the other side of that fence.
That's right.
With the I-502 thing, I've spent a lot of time... well, hold on. Let me wrap this real quick. And then with the I-502 people, I've spent a lot of time trying to understand the arguments opposed to the driving provisions. And I get what they're saying because I use cannabis and I know it's true. But if I was a prohibitionist, none of what they're saying would convince me. In fact, it would probably make me more supportive of 502, which means they're actually helping promote the campaign when they're trying to fight against it. And I'm like, you've got to understand what you're saying. You're saying, hey, we're all driving high right now. What do you mean you're going to take that away from us? And that's the loudest message coming out about 502 right now. There are prohibitionists jumping on board.
Oh, yeah.
Like crazy. You know what? It doesn't even matter what happens after that. The prohibitionists are going to pass legalization, the term legalization, and that will impact the national debate.
Right. So it won't really matter in 49 days.
We have 37% because we have no message, good or bad, out there right now, and no money to put a message out there. So people have all sorts of different views on what we're trying to do. Some of them have confused it with Oregon or Colorado, some with Washington. Some don't even know it's on the ballot.
Right.
So I think that there's some validity in addressing those opponents' perspectives because that's what 502 does. It speaks to the opponents, and they know that, and that's why they're upset. It's not speaking to the cannabis user, but it's polling much higher because of that.
Right.
We'll find out at the election whether or not that's a successful strategy, but the polling indicates that it is.
Yeah. Meanwhile, one of the polls that we were talking about earlier was one that came out in Russ's article, and it's about Measure 80. Let me see if I can find it here.
I have it pulled up.
Do you have it? Read it. Would you read it for me? Because I can't find it. Oh, there it is.
Read the whole thing?
Well, this is on Measure 80, which would allow adults to
Russ should read his article if we're going to have this read aloud. Then we get
the article. We're just going to talk about the numbers.
Let me get to that.
There you go.
I didn't realize that News Russ was going to be called upon.
Yes.
No, that's good. That's good. Oh, I can do this. I'm a professional, eh?
I like to.
Survey USA has released a new poll on Oregon Measure 80, the so-called Oregon Cannabis Tax Act. Support for the measure is registering at 37%, with 41% opposed and a whopping 22% undecided. Support for the measure demographically breaks down along typical lines, with support greater among young and Democrats, for instance, yet only among self-described liberals does Measure 80 enjoy majority, 61% support. The young and Democrats only support Measure 80 at 47%, with 1/3 to 1/4 opposed respectively. Also, there's a surprising demographic that bucks previous legalization poll trends. Support for legalization is lower in the Portland area than the rest of the more conservative areas of the state.
I found that those numbers particularly interesting because they're completely counterintuitive to everything that we know. So I don't know what faith to put in this poll to begin with. And I also think, didn't it heavily lean towards the elderly population when the elderly are a much smaller proportion of our population? I think it was something like 60% of the poll.
According to the survey demographic composition of voters, leaned 21% at age 65 or older, 32% in the age range of 50 to 64, for a total of 53% age 50 or older.
Yeah, and I think that demographically it was something more like 40% of our population, but I could be mistaken.
Is that population or likely voters?
I don't know, but I think that demographically they were comparing it in one of the not a Stoner article. This was like where I read it at Oregon Live or whoever was presenting it said that it didn't necessarily match the population.
Another demographic that's often cited in these polls, cell phones were 28% of the poll, 72% were landlines.
That's what I'm saying. I mean, that's not our current population. Don't get me wrong. There's a large number of people with landlines, but it's, again, something like half of people still use a landline, as a...
Well, I mean...
It's a much smaller number. It's not 28% of people primarily using cell phones.
I more often assume that it's a cell phone than it's a landline.
Right, exactly. I mean, it's this changing demographic. So I really don't know how much credit to give this poll, but it does present some interesting differences too.
I will say this. I will say this about this poll. And and Russ and I were talking about this. I don't want to trust it either. I mean, I really hope that this is not a good demonstration of, our current climate.
49 days to change that view.
It would, right. But, I mean, I'd like to think that it's stronger than that, but maybe I'm living in the weeds too, like a lot of our, our friends and colleagues. But, I mean, it is kind of sad that in Portland, it's polling so low. In Portland.
Yeah.
And the group in between, that was, I like to call them the childbearing years, family raising years. That's a very low demographic, which means we haven't done our job talking to those parents about why this is important. And for I think a lot of parents within the community, that's such an important argument. And that's why a lot of women get involved in this, because they start to understand the argument why it isn't safe for our kids. But I mean that demographic, we're just not doing a good job.
Speaking of the age demographics, just to give them to you, 18 to 34s are at 47%, 35 to 49, which we call the child rearing years, 36%. The empty nest years, 50 to 64, 39%, and the retiree years, age 65 and older, 24%.
Yeah. So
24%.
I think, and I could be mistaken, but I think that what I've seen is that there's a lot of media coverage up in Washington. That means that they're having the conversation. It doesn't even matter if the media is getting it all wrong or giving them bad information. They're actively having conversations. They're having town halls. There's been public debates. Multiple different media outlets are covering it from their different perspectives, whether for or against.
Yes.
In Oregon, we're not really getting any conversation at all.
We're not engaging.
And the conversations that we are having too often are about California or about what's going on in Washington, or we're not talking about what's happening right here in our own backyard, coming on our ballot in just a few weeks.
Well, and I think that is what you're saying earlier. It's too many of us are just talking to our community and think we're doing a great job because somebody agrees with us. To really educate the public, that message has to go beyond our parameters. You're not going to convince the High Times crowd that legalization should happen. You're not going to convince you're not going to convince a lot of people that I sit around the table and enjoy cannabis with. You're just not.
Let me throw this out there really quick, because this is something I'm working on doing some articles about, but who knows when I'll finally get them all done. But Russ used to post articles about what our different legislators responded to these questions of marijuana. I remember, there was quite a few of them. And more often than not, they were disfavorable to our community. Now we have political candidates across the board, from your local town, city council, to the state representatives and senators to presidential candidates openly running on a legalized marijuana or I
Ending
support
prohibition.
medical marijuana
Yeah.
or, removing
and
these
races are being won and
obstructions.
lost. And so I really do see this moment as it being a very important
Well, this is what I was going to say while you think of what you were going to say.
what's the word I'm looking for?
It's Brad Avakian is running for the labor commissioner
Right.
here. He was outspoken against the Emerald Steel decision, which is the one that said medical marijuana could not be accommodated in the Oregon workplace. He was opposed to that decision and felt that it should be treated like other medicines. He's definitely trying to find out more about our community and be more supportive of our needs as labor commissioner.
Right.
Ellen Rosenblum, our attorney general, has come out, in favor of medical marijuana. At the very least, she feels that it needs some reforms, but she's supportive of patients having access, particularly safe and regulated access. She's willing to defend our rights against the federal government, for our state to be different in these laws. None of these people are, let's go smoke a joint, but they all have different reasons for understanding. We've got Joyce Seeger running in District 2, also supportive of ending prohibition and has openly endorsed Measure 80. We've got Jim Clark, one of our own, running in District 1. We've got so many people that are openly in our own state coming out in support of our issues.
Right. And yet we are still stumbling over ourselves. We are still having a difficult job getting the message out to people, getting a clear message out to people. And Oregon has been, fraught with problems for a long, long time. We can't seem to raise the money. We can't seem to get on the same initiative. We are very divided in this community. And I think it's probably what's keeping us from, reaching out, because we're still trying to put out the fires to our own community. Nobody else wants to touch us.
But that goes back to what I was saying and more or less ranting about in the previous segment, is that, of course, we don't have any money. They keep stealing all our stuff. Our money, our houses, our cars, our jobs, putting us in jail, taking our kids. Pardon us if we're a little disorganized. I mean, really, we need help from people that have it all together and have money and stuff, because we are under attack. We're in shreds. You know what I mean? We're trying to fight to win this. Instead of people making fun of all the stoners that can't get their shit together and come up with a few bucks, do it.
Yeah.
Help us change these laws. It's not for us. It's for our civil rights and our
doing. They've got a super PAC trying to raise money for Measure 80. You've been doing some cold calls on that today too, haven't you?
Yeah. I guess we should mention that really quick. It's Oregonians for Law Reform. It's OregonLawReform.com. And they're seeking donations. We're trying to raise enough money to get a loud and clear public media campaign out there, because clearly our voters don't know what they need to know to make this decision. We have 22% undecided. It doesn't even matter which way they go. Clearly there's no message yet for them to go, because that's a huge chunk of undecided voters. There needs to be a message.
In the other two states have 9%.
Yeah. So there's a huge chunk of voters to be swayed, but we need to get this message out there. And I keep saying yesterday. We can't wait anymore. We need a message now.
Well, yeah, and I know that Paul Stanford had mentioned that there are yard signs for people.
Yes, at it's vote80.org. Paul has some merchandise and some yard signs and some posters and various other sorts of things to help raise money and awareness. And then OregonForLawReform.com. Sorry, I just saw the website the last few days and I haven't.
Oregon Law Reform.
Thank you. I knew I was saying it wrong. OregonLawReform.com. They are accepting donations to help raise this public awareness campaign as well. So voting or contributing to either one of those locations is crucial. Yesterday.
Good done.
We're going to go to a break, and when we come right back, we'll be wrapping up. You're listening to A Different View. What?
Legalize it. Don't criticize it. Legalize it. Yeah. And we will advertise it.
Hi, this is Dan Michaels. If you're looking for professional voice talent for your commercial or podcast, I'm your man. Visit danmichaelsaudio.com for more information.
This I know, there's 100 liars wanting to be free, walking in the streets today. This I know, he's a peaceful warrior, speaking only the truth, yet cut down by ruthless lies. Free Mark Emery.
And now we're back with A Different View.
Welcome back. You're listening to A Different View. There's just so much to cover after having been off so many weeks, and at this time of the year, with the election coming up and everything, so much is going on.
So much is, do you find your blood pressure just kind of like at the grrr level? Just
There's so much. I'm watching. This is, so for the blunt wrap, let's do this really quick because I've kind of had this little pet peeve that I've wanted to talk about all day and I didn't want to put it into an email because I just didn't have time to write such an email. But
it's not the time to
I can talk about this really quick. I think the biggest problem with our whole community is our pessimism. I think it really is. I think that there's so much to get us down, and it's intended.
That's funny because I feel like it's just the opposite. I feel like it's our optimism.
High in the sky idealist optimism.
No. I think it's our pessimism that we always think that there's something about to get us any second now. We've got to always be on the defense. We're always about to lose
like
something.
You were saying, the raids and people are attacking
it's true, but I'm saying by keeping us in that mode is the problem.
They're actually out to get you.
Well, and they are out to get us, and we've got to stop them. And we can, and that's the optimistic view. No, that's what I'm trying to say is that we've got 49 days. Again, to mention, I'm doing that countdown.
49 days. Jennifer wants everyone to know that. It's 49 days
until the election.
Send money now.
49. Well, it's not even just about sending money now because, like me, I'm broke. I couldn't send you a penny if it would save your life. And
it's not about whether you can send $1. It's about educating one more person and one more person and one more person.
My call. Don't get me wrong. I am asking for money because we need a big media campaign. But my call to everybody right now is to quit being a pessimist. Spend the next 49 days convincing at least one person a day. As somebody at the supermarket,
somebody
your
on
local
TriMet, strike up a conversation while you're waiting for the bus or the train or in grocery lines.
And it's come up a lot recently. A lot of people are afraid to talk about this topic because they want to hide their marijuana use or they don't want anybody to know they're a card holder. Oh. This is the perfect opportunity to talk about it without having to reveal a thing.
You know what?
Did you see that we're going to be voting on marijuana this
week? You know what? I have to tell you this. This is how I brought this up in Florida. This is exactly how I brought this up. Because in Florida, these are some really hard-nosed Republicans. And and it was very interesting to me because even the Democrats or the so-called liberals were very like, oh no, not marijuana. So it was very difficult to bring up. So you know how I did it? I did it in a way of I disagreed with it. So I took their position, and then I as they were starting to go, start getting into the conversation and divulge more how they feel, and I go, yeah, but they could do this. And then they could do that. And so before and that's how I approached that, is because I knew they were already going to be opposing it. And so I call it trickery, call it lying. I just copped to their position, and before I knew it, they were disagreeing with me and would be agreeing with my real
but in Oregon, you don't even have to do that. All you have to say is, did you see that we're going to be voting about...
But I'm saying is that's the fear.
You're not going to let me ask this, are you?
Get to the question.
I said in Oregon, all you have to say is, did you see that we're going to be voting on marijuana legalization? Totally open-ended. Let them talk to you. You don't have to say a thing. You don't have to. Anybody can do this.
Yeah, Jennifer, but most people won't do it because they have to come to this on in their own way.
I'm saying that they don't have to defend it. They don't have to pretend to know anything about it. They can simply ask, well, what do you think about that?
But there's that fear, too, that people go, oh, my gosh, they're going to think if I even talk about it, if I even mention it. I mean, there's still that fear.
Shirley Morgan's talking about it. Chief of Police are talking about it. Sheriff's Association's talking about it. They're not smoking pot. It's okay to talk about it.
Right. Yeah, those are people in political positions. Those are not you and your employer or you and your
coworker. And this is the
coworker.
pessimism that I'm talking about, because our community is afraid to talk about it even when it's on the table right in front of us.
That's why I put a mic in front of my face. But the thing is that I'm just talking, how do we teach people who aren't you and me? Right, that's my point. You're talking about you and me. Those are statements that you and me and anybody in this room would be able to do. I'm talking about people who are like, one of my really good friends who works in the corporate world. She's very religious and she's very involved in her church. There's no way she is going to open that can of worms around any of her friends.
You could just have a newspaper, an Oregonian, Oregon Live article, Reformat article, and just be like, did you see this?
That's a great idea.
I'm saying that this is all we need to do.
That's
one person
I
a
would
day.
agree with that one. Well, that's if you get company every day. But my point
when you go out.
Most people don't, Jennifer. Most
people don't leave their homes.
Most people go to work every day. And that's what I'm saying, is that to have that conversation at work or in your church is difficult for people.
No, I know that when I used to work in an office environment, people talked about smoking pot all the time. They didn't talk about doing it. They talked about other people doing it. All the time.
Well, sure. I know this guy who smoked some weed on the
weekend. You hear he got busted? He failed his piss test. Just like that. I mean, that's what I'm saying is it doesn't have to be go marijuana. But it can just be, what do you think about the fact that we're voting?
I think what you're saying is also that optimism that you think that anybody out there who's just going to be, who nobody else knows, that are total closeted smoker, is going to be able to open up that without that fear going, oh my God, they might do that around somebody, they maybe not.
I want to tour the state of Oregon and talk to everybody, because apparently nobody else will do it. We just need to tell people.
Well, you have the mouth. No, I'm just kidding.
I have the what? I have the mouth? I just don't have the gas.
Send money now.
Send money now. No, really, I mean, it's just having the conversations. We don't have to be right. We don't even have to win at any of these conversations.
No, it's not about winning. It's about having the conversation. That I will agree with you and give you 100%. That is absolutely the problem. We don't have the conversation.
I love that it took all hour for you to agree with me.
It is one of my favorite things of engineering this show, to listen to you completely disagree on something you absolutely agree on.
I know, I love
it. You both agreed with the exact same point and discussed it in a very different way. It was very interesting.
That's called a different view.
A different view. So, well, we're so glad to be back, and we plan on being back next Tuesday too.
Yes. If you guys have topics or issues you want to discuss on the show, send us an email to
adifferentview420@gmail.com. You can also hit us up on Facebook, A Different View. Mm-hmm. ADV420 is the Twitter handle. Check me out on the Examiner. Examiner.com. It's on the Facebook.
You link a lot of those to our Facebook page.
I do. On ADV420, I link most of my stories there, so you can always follow them from there. 49 days until the election. Maybe you don't feel prepared to have these conversations. The next 49 days, I'm equipping you. Follow the stories.
It's critical to get past our fears and our egos and have the conversation.
And get to the crux of the topics. We're not even talking about the topics that are relevant to this discussion half the time, because we're on this surface.
Well, this issue should have been put to bed a long time ago, as far as I'm concerned. But the fact that we're still having it, this many decades later, it seems like a huge waste of time and resources. But we are where we are, and we still need to have that conversation.
Well, thank you for listening to A Different View. We'll see you next week, Tuesday at 8 p.m. Pacific.
Sitting around getting stoned. My couch says that I'm staying home. It's clear to see I'm fully relaxed. Put all my worries back into a sack. It's a counterattack for my moodiest swing. I say that my weed's a preventative thing. If you can't understand why I'm fighting the band when they take all your liquor, let's see where you stand on the road. It's a long, long road.